Hello, Dr. Miko. I'm sure that you are probably the only one going to be seeing this, so I don't want to say hello, everybody. My name is Colin Shable, and I chose to do my project on forecasting and specifically forecasting sales and its importance in CompXM. So, to get things started, I just wanted to kind of go over forecasting. So, as we learn forecasting in Chapter 7 of this semester, forecasting allows us to quantitatively or qualitatively forecast something. Now, this can be sales, revenues, trends. You can pretty much forecast anything and put a quantitative number to it. So, it gives us an accurate way to know what to expect. Um, as you know, there's so many internal and external factors happening within business that it's not guaranteed, but it gives us a ballpark estimate of what to expect, and it also gives us the ability to do a what if analysis, which can show us if our numbers are correct and our percentages are right, if we will be able to reach the goals we are setting, but it'll also show us if we exceed them goals, what we'll be looking at, and if we fall short, what we'll be looking at. And that's important for companies to remember, especially in CapSim and CompXM, because the make sure your cash position's right, and make sure that you have enough money that if you were to be over forecasting and you took a large inventory hit, that when Big Al comes to visit you or if Big Al wants to come visit, you have enough cash position to cover the inventory costs. So moving on, CompXM is something that is known well to many MBA students. I know we have to complete the simulation here at St. Francis during the MBA 550 course. I'm currently taking that with Dr. Eklund. For those who may not know, the CompXM and CapSim simulation is an online simulation. You're given 4 to 5 perfectly positioned products, and you got to compete against either computer-based teams or um, competitors within your own class. And it tests the skills of business, this economics, finance, marketing, and even accounting. So, I mean, it's very well rounded, and it's a good way to gain experience working with these in a real life scenario, per se, with a simulation, and it's very transferable to real life situations. Now, forecasting in CompXM and CapSim is very important. By doing this, you are aligning your marketing and production. CompXM and CapSim give you benchmark predictions based off of your research and development and your product's price, as well as its accessibility and promotion expenses. Now, the benchmarking is always wrong. Benchmarking is always wrong because it assumes that the best that you can get without any competition. Well, sadly, that's mistaken because there's always going to be competition within the simulation as long as your opponents are trying, and if there's a computer-based simulation that makes 0 human errors. So you always got to calculate out your sales forecast to make sure that you're aligning your marketing and production properly so you don't take huge inventory hits. This ensures that inventory is proper as well as your plant utilization is right. You got to make sure if you're producing enough product, you have enough capacity, and that your automation's high enough that your product's going to be made efficiently. Also, forecasting keeps you out of the red. The red being negative. If you forecast properly and you get your sales forecast pretty close to your actual sales, you're going to have a higher profit because you don't take a huge inventory hit. And whenever your company is doing well, helps you gain a higher market share because once you're selling more product, your product's the highest in the segment, the higher in the segment, the higher your market share is going to gain. Now, strategies in CompXM and CapSim, there's several different ones, but I chose the 3 pretty popular ones that were chosen amongst my classmates and myself. They are the cost leader strategy, niche differentiator, and the broad cost differentiator. The strategy I chose for this is the broad cost differentiator. Pretty much you compete on price, and you can get away with a little bit higher priced product because of its higher reliability, reducing costs through materials, through the TQM module, and you're also making sure your product's highly accessible. There's consequences of inaccuracy, especially with forecasting in CompXM and CapSim. Some of these include higher inventory costs, whenever you incur these costs is because you over forecasted, and now you're stuck with the inventory you have that you didn't sell. You take on them costs, it lowers your cash amounts. You lose market share whenever you're not selling product. If you're not selling product, it's probably due to your positioning or your customer buying criteria is not right. Whenever this happens, you have the lack of the ability to fund the company. Big Al comes and visits you. He's going to want to come fund his golf courses, casinos, and his Corvettes. So you don't want to be giving him money. And you want to make sure that you don't get bad profits, because then that also automatically lowers your race at winning in the simulation. Forecasting is important, especially in real life, because it keeps you employed. If you mess up bad and don't forecast properly, you're probably going to be out of a job or going to be in trouble by your employer. It tracks trends in a changing market, so you can always allows you to quantify data. It allows you to see where these numbers are coming from and see where you're possibly missing out or you need to improve on. So here's the first data I was given through the round 0 results. We do not compete in round 0 because that's the computer simulation. The results in this one are automatically generated, and as you can see, there are a few problems here, especially within my team, Andrews, with the unit inventory held over versus the units sold. So I'll get into a little bit more detail on my first round decisions to show you where things went wrong and where I corrected them on my round 1 decisions. Now, understanding this quantitative forecasting, you got to understand that there's a growth rate per segment per year. The thrift segment's 11%, the core segment's 10%, the nano segment's 14%, and the elite segment's 16%. Just to pick one out, nano customers are seeking a cutting-edge technology that is small in size. Its ideal position at the end of round 0 is performance 9.7 and size 8.3 at 35% overall buying criteria, which is fairly large. But you can't forget about the other 3 that also make up a large sum of the importance of the buying criteria. So the price is in between $28 and $40, and that's importance is 27%. Age 1 year, importance is 20%, and the reliability, the MTFB, is 18 to 24,000, and that's at 18%. So these are all important to consider, especially whenever you're trying to make an accurate forecast and judging external factors. So just looking at my round 1 decisions, you can see that I stocked out on 2 products. Those would be the Nano and Elite. Now, whether I didn't calculate them properly and I didn't make enough product, or that was the exact amount of products, we just may never know. And then we can take a look at our thrift and core segments, which we incurred a little bit of higher inventory carryover, but that's explainable due to the research and development on the thrift category. Now, thrift, the most important buying criteria in it happens to be price, and I have a higher priced product, which means I'm probably not going to sell as much of it. Now, I can get away with that by having a higher reliability, and because I don't sell as much product, I make up for those costs by selling higher priced products. Now, you can see where the previous round sales were 1,008 in the Nano, 895 in Elite, 1012 in Thrift, and 1759 in the Core. Now, the forecast that I chose, I did the growth rate times the product sold before and added those 2 numbers together, give me around 1287, 1113, 1028, and 1186, give or take. Moving on, going to the next segment, I want to talk a little bit more about quantitative and qualitative decisions. Now, that one, the decision prior, happened to be a qualitative decision. I'm going to give you a quantitative decision. Now I'm going to give you an example of a qualitative decision. Looking at qualitative decisions, those could be revision dates, contribution margin, and the age of the product. Now, looking at these, they're not going to give you exact data on how to forecast your product, but it gives you the ability to put theory in with the numbers and kind of give you an idea. So the revision dates. So looking at revision dates for my product, they're all fairly young in the year. Between May and April, that's very young for a product to be researched. That gives me almost, over 6 months to sell my product at the proper revision date. It's important to consider the revision dates, contribution margin, and age of product because it kind of shows you the importance of making an accurate forecast. Now, your contribution margin is how much your product is going to make for you, and your age of the product is how old the product is after it's researched and developed. In some of the products, the most important buying criteria happens to be age, and that may be year 1 or also up to year 5. So it's important to consider that whenever making your business decisions, because that is part of the buying criteria. And sometimes customers prefer an older product and other customers prefer a newer product. Going on to another round I want to show you. It's just another forecast. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. One of the most efficient forecasting methods is to multiply your decisions in the prior round by the growth rate, and then using the customer survey scores to kind of create your estimated or educated guess. And that's a good way to forecast. However, I found that also figuring out your market share in each segment, whether that be the nano, elite, thrift, or core, and multiplying that by the industry growth, or taking your market share by the already multiplied market demand times growth rate, and taking your market share and figuring out that number. I figured out that's pretty accurate as well. It's also important to look at pricing difference. Depending on your strategy, it could be a make or break. You might not be selling as many products, but you're selling higher price products. You're not relying on volume sales, you're relying on quality sales. You also need to consider competitors having multiple same segments products. Looking at Bell, they have 2 thrift products and 2 core products. It's going to be hard to compete with them in them industries whenever they're selling twice the amount of products you are. However, they are selling them at a lower rate, so you have to beat them on quality of product once again. And looking at your plant utilization, you want to make sure the automation and your capacity is fit for your plant to run efficiently. An efficient plant utilization is between 100 and 200%, but you got to make sure you're not overproducing or underproducing. Looking at all this, what does it mean? This data I've collected allows me to track forecasts to see how well I did, both personally and professionally. I also see what formulas were most effective. My analysis that I feel I forecasted very well. If I had scored better on the balanced scorecard, I could have done much better overall. And if you're not familiar with CAPSIM, that judges how you do in each category of business. I believe this is good practice for a real life scenario. Forecasting is key to lining up marketing and production. You can always forecast for 4 to 5 years on round 0. Industries are always changing and have many variables, so that's why I always like to use the market share calculation. You must also consider what your competition and their strategies when you're forecasting. So this relates to statistics by using the forecasting module in Excel. Here it shows the what-if analysis and the upper confidence bound sales and lower confidence bound sales for ACE and AW. Here's it again for ART and ANT. Moving forward from this, I believe that using forecasting will help me a lot in my future position, especially if I work in sales. It'll help me figure out high demand months and see if there's any trends. I know a lot of products sell in Q4 during the Christmas season. I also like to be able to measure things using statistics, and putting a calculated number to my work makes me feel more confident. What I learned from this is how to forecast sales in general. If I didn't take this QBA course, I think I would have a lot harder of a time in CAPSIM, and I'm very grateful I was able to learn forecasting firsthand. I was also able to understand demand. I also was able to link to my MBA courses to help me succeed, which I thought was very interesting. Conclusion, CAPSIM and CompXM is hard, but it's not impossible. It requires a lot of strategic thinking. By learning forecasting prior to the simulation, I had an advantage. Forecasting is very interesting, and I believe this made me more qualified for my future position.